Hello and welcome to First Issues Weekly, the compilation of the weekly comic review show First Issues Now. Every day you can check out the newest first issues released this week on First Issues Now, or weekly in this batch. I'm AJ Carey, the comic archivist, and this is the comics released for the week of July 9th, 2025. And yes, you can tell when I had to change mics. Sorry about that. Now, I'm going to be covering this issue in the then and now of comics in about 2 weeks, so I have no idea if this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but I am just stating facts. So with that said, let's check out Marvel's First Family and Fantastic Four #1, written by Ryan North, pencils by Humberto Ramos, inks by Victor Olazaba, colors by Edgar Delgado, and letters by VC's Travis Lanham. We begin how every Fantastic Four story usually does nowadays, with the Fab Four fighting Doctor Doom, who also has Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation, so he's going through his magical phase like he does every so often. While the FF are kicking his butt, he gets irate and zaps them, vanishing them. Okay, technically he separates them throughout time. Johnny arrives on, well, I believe to be considered prebiotic Earth. There's not even oxygen in the atmosphere. Later on it is said to be the Cambrian era. The Thing, however, is sent to prehistoric Earth, and almost instantly gets into a fistfight with a dinosaur or two. Mr. Fantastic is somewhere in the Middle Ages. I'm assuming a crusade of some sort, because there's always a crusade, but he's sent to a generic castle being besieged. And finally, the Invisible Woman is on a barren post-life Earth, a bright red sun baking the landscape. Now granted, 3 of them are less than worried since they all put their spatial and temporal coordinates on a giant rock, so really Invisible Woman's kind of being let down here. So the creative team for this, more or less, was the one who did that Fantastic Four short that I covered over on Marvel Zero last week, and I thought that was fun. But this, is it too easy to say that this was fantastic? Yeah, I figured, but it really is. Initially, I was hesitant about the book. I've never really been a big Fantastic Four reader, despite everyone telling me that I need to be, especially once they came back from their not owned by Disney isolation to a surprisingly large pop around. So I was a bit, oh god, there's going to be a continuity beast here. But no. The only thing that really needs an explanation in this, in anything in the beforehand, is why the hell Johnny is rocking a Sam Elliott level mustache. Although it's not bad, it's giving a lot of Cody Rhodes with the mustache vibes. And yes, there's even some science in this that's actually always nifty to see. So, long story short, Ryan North gets the characters very well, and the art is fan-tucking-fastic, so there's only one obvious answer to go with here. The verdict for Fantastic Four #1, right now, is pull it. Pull it means that it is not only worth reading, but it absolutely should be on your pull list, digitally or physically, or both, so you can read it as it goes along. It is awesome. The Marvel swimsuit specials are a thing of beauty from the 90s. Not because they were sexy cheesecake, far from it. You would have some great art, but oh my god, we'll get into that. Sorry for everyone who thinks that 90s mainstream art was the pinnacle of artistic beauty. Come on now. So let's see if Marvel can capture what truly made those specials special in the year of our Lord 2025. This is Marvel Swimsuit Special, Friends, Foes, and Rivals. Naturally, you get Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeks to write, have Nick Bradshaw on the through-a-story art, Rochelle Rosenberg for colors, and VC's Travis Lanham for letters. However, that's all for the wraparound story, as ultimately, this is an art book. Now, I will say, before I get into anything I'm about to say, yes, this is absolutely worth having on your shelf hard copy. I won't even say buy it digitally. I think digitally it loses a lot. But the physical book, you should have every iteration of the Marvel Swimsuits edition. So collect it, go back, get the older stuff, because yes, they are all worth having for one reason or another. Now then, firstly, I want to say that the story Tim and Tony weave through the air quote justification of the book is fun on a bun. Especially with all the Tracy Scopps and AI arts of the world, the Avengers deciding to make their own swimsuit issue, and in the end, no one cares because the internet exists, bro. It's fun. It's funny. In universe, some of them have already had sex tapes leaked. Just want to say that. But there are a lot more gags than that in this because they have to go and get like the X-Men or Wolverine or the Guardians. It's good and fun and I love it. Unrelated, y'all should be reading Money Shot. If enough of you bug Tim about it, and you buy it solely because of me, he may not be annoyed for me for not releasing that hack/fan audio series that I was working on a year or two ago. Anyways, as for the art book side of things, they are all fantastic. I personally love the Marguerite Sauvage Rogue and Gambit one. The Ryan Gonzalez Venom is really cute and adorable. I love the pastel cuteness. It's amazing. And I was actually shocked on how much I love the Cloak and Dagger by Dave Marquez and Nolan Woodard. Oh my gosh. But this in turn brings up an issue I don't have necessarily with the book, but merch in general. Comics are kind of at the peak where they're like on a standard level. They are breathtaking. So why the hell aren't there posters of these? This is the kind of problem I have with art books in general, and even magazines in general. Because we used to call these mini posters, which was like, oh yeah, you gotta cut them out and then you can stick them on your wall. Honestly, it was dumb then, especially in comic books. But now you can literally have it where all of these are buyable as posters off of Marvel.com. Or anything like that. Hell, even if you don't want to do it outright, have them partner with Displate or Posters.com or something. Many of these are so damn good, even if they were double-sized pages. Maybe that's what would be the easy, logical thing. Just go with slightly larger. Make it a prestige-sized book. Even if those suck having on a shelf, it would be worth buying and probably look slightly better than if you're reading it digitally, or even if you see it on a normal page. But that's a nitpick. Actually, everything I'm about to say is nitpicky, so take everything I say with a grain of, okay, boomer, even if I'm Zennial. Now, for the actual problem I do have with this book, the old one was framed as a magazine. They had hilarious little articles and great little ads, for like hair gel sponsored by Beast, or weight loss supplements by Interloper, or Polaris and She-Hulk posing for Greenpeace as a rib. Hell, one issue they were pulling a full Marvel Olympics competition out, complete with articles, stat blocks, who is who winning. It was a hoot and a half. And yes, there was cheesecake, more than we could ever get now in a official released book. But I'm also wondering, because there really isn't. See, I'm wondering if there was an editorial push to make the crux of this issue justifying the issue. This is actually a really good setup, though. So again, I can't fault it for being a good story justifying itself, but it loses some of the fun of, wow, I'm looking at the, Marvel swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated. I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that it was based kind of around the swimsuit Sports Illustrated stuff, in that vein, where it's like, it wasn't trying to be Playboy, but it would also be funny if they tried to be Playboy. And honestly, this is a great setup if they do decide that this is going to be a yearly thing, which I really hope they do. Now, here's going to be my controversial statement. While I love all the art in this book, I think it denotes a problem in modern comic art as a whole. We're too good. For what I mean by that is, the art in the original swimsuit editions was all over the place. You would have a perfectly beautiful painting of sexy Colossus, shiny in chrome in a leopard print Speedo, and then you would turn the page and you would get the worst looking Wolverine that you've ever did see. Whereas the majority of the art in this is great, absolutely. But you could argue that it never reaches a 10. It stays at a solid 6 to 8 range. You never get a 1 or a 2 in there like you did in the originals, but you never get that, oh my god, factor of like seeing Brian Stelfreeze's Colossus from the 94 special, or the Colossus from the first special with the leopard print bikini. But that's also where we get the counter to it, where it's like, wow, you don't see that, you don't get a 10 out of 10 in the middle of all this goodness. You don't get the pop of, oh my god. Don't get me wrong. Mahmoud Asrar's Black Cat and Spider-Man looks great. She-Hulk looks great. Even the Captain Marvel at the end looks great by Veruki. I'm not even going to try butchering that name. Literally, all of it looks great. But outside of my favorites, like Marguerite Sauvage, I think would be a phenomenal cover to just a Mr. and Mrs. X or Rogue and Gambit book. Ryan Gonzalez's watercolor Venom looking all adorable is great. But again, those also are things that you get to kind of see as covers. This is almost like a variant cover book, and maybe that's the issue I have. Like, I'm really glad we don't get the low lows. That's probably why I say that this is literally just controversial insofar as that there's no 10s. but also I don't think there's anything less than a 5. And you can tell why these artists are considered really good compared to the old ones where you would be like, oh, so that's why you only do interior art, because you need the little tiny panels to cover up whatever the fuck that Iron Man looks like. But again, that's just something that is a personal thing for me, and I'll be honest, I still love this book. Everything I've said has just been minor quibbles that are honestly me trying to find a fault. It's phenomenal in its lighthearted nature of the story being told. It looks great with all the art pages. And honestly, I want this to do so well. Because I want more of these. I think Marvel, or any company really, could strike gold, or at least silver, if they went with more special issues like this. Be it Cheesecake Summer, or Christmas Wonderland, or Halloween. A Halloween version of the swimsuit edition would be amazing. And I'll state it right now, since no one is listening, I'll love to be the editor on a quarterly art book in this style, because it's a fantastic market that I think gets lost when you're also focusing on being a comic book arm of a multi-billion-dollar company. I do it for criminal wages, too. Just saying. Also, bring back Assistant Editors Month. I said my verdict at the top of this, but if you don't remember after all that ranting, it's collect it. Collect it means that you should have it digitally. You should have it physically. You should have it with a house. You should have it in a mouse. No, you should get all the past issues of Marvel Swimsuit even when the art was kinda shit. There's a lot worth having for different reasons. And I definitely would say that check out all the variant covers for this issue because they're also worth having. Yes, I may have gone full collector on this one. Now, of course, this is definitely one that I need to see how the rest of the community is handling it too. Dan Jurgens and Bruno Redondo. That is all I have to squee about before we get into reading Superman Treasury 2025, Hero for All #1. Written by Dan Jurgens, art by Bruno Redondo, inks by Keo Felipe, colors by Adriano Lucas, and letters by Dave Sharp. Sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name there. We begin with Superman fighting a robot, as is time-honored tradition, but even though he beats the bot, something doesn't feel right. We then flash back to Lana, Pete, Lex, and Clark playing soccer. I'm sure I don't need to explain who any of those people are, right? Awesome. Before a twister touches down and everyone races into the storm cellar. But there's one person missing at the end. Jonathan Kent. Yep, Pa Kent is dead from a tornado in a way that doesn't make him look stupid. I'm sure that's not a sore subject for most people still. In the present, an alien armada blows up the Watchtower satellite, with Black Canary and Green Arrow barely able to escape. In the past, Lex Luthor, who still has hair mind you, talks Clark into going to Metropolis University with him. In the present, aliens are invading Earth everywhere, with some about to blow up little Johnny Kent, the son of Superman, who's his super son's age right now, so pre-teenish, before Steel shows up to save him. Then we flash back to Lex Luthor, who's helping Clark get a job at the Daily Planet. I'm starting to feel something's up here. In the present, Lady Maxima, for anyone who doesn't know, for expediency's sake, she's a horny space queen. She has now taken Cyborg Superman as her new lover, and she's the one leading the invasion. Wonder Woman goes up because even if Clark hasn't shown up yet, the Amazonian will, well, okay, actually, she gets blasted faster than Superman in the Justice League cartoon, and Lois is about to get blasted too, but Batman comes in to save the day. While Lex Luthor, in his green and purple power armor that I always mark out seeing, stands up to Cyborg Superman to allow time for them to flee. Meanwhile, John Kent meets up with Glayana, who I actually talked about her first appearance in the Then and Now of Comics episode on Action Comics in general from last week. Look, they screwed over the Action Comics numbering, so it wasn't a new #1, it was actually 1051. Bite me, and I don't mention her by name, bite me. Then we go back in time to a one-eyed Jimmy Olsen, talking to a very bearded Clark Kent, who's also the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. Then, Lex Luthor walks in with his sons and their mother, Lois Lane. Oh hey, those aren't flashbacks at all, are they? They're lies! Lies and Lex Luthor propaganda. How dare he bald gracefully? Superman, knowing that he was actually the one who made Lex Luthor bald in a stupid lab accident when they were kids, realizes this is all fake, remembers his entire history in some great splash pages, complete with a Legion of Superheroes reference, everyone can rejoice, breaks free of his cage, flies off, uber pissed, stops the invasion in the shortest way possible for me to wrap this up while you still have stuff to read. Now, Dan Jurgen is literally my definitive Superman writer. For me, and I do want to stress that for a lot of people who'd pick someone else, for me, he's gotten the character perfect ever since the time I started reading him, writing him. Yeah, that made sense in my head. And Bruno Redondo is my top pick for guy who should be drawing everyone always. Ever since Injustice, although you can see an evolution in his art style since then, which is enhanced by having a stellar inker and colors to make every panel vibrant and just exquisite and poppy. I love it. Top marks all around. So does that mean that this verdict is a no-duh? Kind of. My verdict is buy it. Buy it means that it is worth buying not just digital, so you can read it whenever you want, but honestly, having read the digital first and now looking at the book in my hand, it is so much more when you get a physical copy of it. The art is stunning. It reads so... This is the Superman book, not necessarily if you want people to start. This is a book that you go, hey, have you ever read Superman before? No. Cool. Read this. You'll get the character. You want more? I'll give you all the other stuff I have in back. But this is a good litmus test of, don't know who Superman is? Here you go. So this is ultimately a phenomenal way to kickstart DC's Summer of Superman. I have absolutely nothing to add before we get into this, other than I'm a big fan of Ed Brisson's writing, and I love Andy Kuhn's art, so I absolutely have high hopes going into this. This is Wild Animals #1, written by Ed Brisson, art by Andy Kuhn, colors by D. Knief, and letters by Rob Jones. So, Neil is having a bad time in his life. His mother is dying, his convenience store job is all sorts of messed up, and his dad was killed for being a good cop. That attack that killed his father also scarred him both emotionally, since, his father died, and physically with half of his body covered in burn marks from boiling oil during the attack from the dirty cops that killed his dad. I can't believe I wrote that sentence at 2 a.m. You can really tell, can't you? However, the snapping point actually happens because of punk kids trying to steal beer. These punk kids decide to try stealing beer, and he's like, guys, just fucking go. And then they kick his ass, so he misses his mother's death. So now he's snapped, and he's ready to take revenge on the world and the dirty cops that made that world for him. This is very much a person finally explodes after society is shit to him for a while. Kind of a comic that is not for everyone. It is easy to read it and say that it is overly cynical, that belongs in the 90s or even the noughties, and I can understand that. But at the same time, I'm a sucker for this sort of story, and honestly, it's always because there's a million ways to make someone have, well, to quote Joker logic, one bad day. And the setup here is really good. Although I did my best to not really spoil the experience of reading it, because the reading of it is ultimately the takeaway. It is a character-driven story. By that, I mean the plot doesn't matter compared to how it's written. The experience of reading it. Is it an action thrill ride? No. It is falling down. It is, hell, the Joker movie, the first one. I haven't seen the second one. It is Taxi Driver, where it is you follow this person, you get inside their head, and you see how the world does what it do and what their effects on it are. Then, of course, Andy Kuhn's art is fantastic to give it a stark realism. Or a stark realness, not necessarily a realism. It's the line work that always makes everything feel grimy, while not being loose or dirty outright. And those muted colors from D. Knief just add it all together to make this visually alluring pie. It's not a pie, it's a comic, silly boy. But you know what I mean. Everything ties together so well. My verdict is kind of a no-brainer. My verdict is, buy it with an asterisk. Buy it means that it should totally be on your pull list. You should get it on physical as well as digital. I personally think books like this, physical, always makes it feel much better. However, the asterisk I'm going to say there is, if you don't know if you like this kind of book, like maybe you've only read superhero books and you're like, you know what, I'll go with something else. It is at the very least worth reading and then deciding for yourself whether or not you like that style. Okay, so a tie-in comic to the movie. Those always pan out well, right? Well, let's take our time looking at Fantastic Four First Steps #1. Written by Matt Fraction, art by Mark Buckingham, colors by Alex Sinclair, and letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. The short premise of this is that these are the early days of the MCU's Fantastic Four, or whatever the new movie, that movie's universal number is, because the 616 is the comic universe, or at least that's what Marvel's been calling it since forever, and the MCU 616 is the world's differing timelines. The MCU uses hypertime, and the rest of us use multiverses. Sorry, not even the point of anything. This is actually taking a look at the first issue of Fantastic Four, the 616 comic Fantastic Four, but filtered through this version of the characters. The first one is where they battle the Mole Man and the Moloids and all the people of Subterranea. Interspersed with all of that, though, there are these interviews, sound bites, and generally a feel to make it like a classic comic with the long-form interviews, ads, and just really fun bits. Oddly, out of every movie tie-in I've seen from Marvel and I've covered repeatedly, I absolutely love this. This isn't just a standard retelling with throwing Pedro Pascal's face onto Reed, but rather, it's also fully showcases a question that I always ask myself when I'm thinking about alternate versions of characters, or when I'm looking at other people's versions of characters. How will they handle a given scenario? Honestly, this FF handles it better than the 616 did, since they actually open relations with Subterranea, and even the neckbeard version of Mole Man we see here is standing with them by the end. It showcases that this FF with minimum resistance is able to become a positive change for the world they live in as a whole. It's awesome, and probably the first time I say this, but guys, this is a movie tie-in worth reading. So yeah, Fraction's awesome. The art is really good. It almost feels like it has a throwback aesthetic while not losing a lot of modern takes, if that makes any sense. So anyways, yes, obviously my verdict is read it. Read it means that it is totally worth picking up and reading. Now, I'm not entirely sure about pullability, since it's a movie tie-in, so while I hope that they do more in this style, I doubt there's plans for future issues. So get it, and I'd say this counts more as a collect it, but again, it really depends on how the future goes for this tie-in. Who knows? Maybe they'll put out a few more of this to keep the interest up while the film is in theaters. Now, I always try and put a little sting in before I get to the comic book proper, before I say the name and everything, but it's Gotham by Gaslight. It's a pretty nifty universe, Earth 19 for us nerds, and it's Andy Diggle, who's pretty good at being good as a writer. So, let's get gaslit. Oh, sweet Christmas, I actually wrote that. With Gotham by Gaslight, A League of Justice, #1. Written by Andy Diggle, art by Leandro Fernandez, colors by Matt Hollingsworth, and letters by Simon Bodland. In a continuity of Batman GBG, The Kryptonian Age, we have a clutch of heroes you may know meeting up in a small town of Smallville to save the day against a cadre of costume crazies working for the industrialist Lex Luthor. Yes, there is not actually a huge premise, but the devil's is in the details on this. Firstly, I would definitely say that while there is a very good recap at the beginning, so I wasn't that lost, I did read The Kryptonian Age when it came out, which was only last year, but I was a little fuzzy on it myself, but it brings you up to speed really quick, so you hop in really more like this is an ongoing than part 2 in a miniseries, or season 2, if that makes any sense. But then again, I think that it would be a waste if they decided to have the Justice League of this Elseworld buried 7 issues into a series, so I'm talking in circles at 3 in the morning. But I bring up that part because hopping directly into this, you are thrown right into character interaction and conflicts that really can be jarring for those that didn't read The Kryptonian Age, because it's essentially, here's some basic origins, now let's argue amongst ourselves about whether Superman's good. But that's sort of where I think I'm split about this book. I love the character interaction. The Elseworlding works really well to keep feeling fresh while also recognizable. Although I will have to admit, every time I saw Oliver Queen bathed in Green Lantern light in a Guy Gardner-inspired outfit, it is jarring, even just a little bit, but only because it's Ollie, man. No one can rock a Van Dyke like him. As for the art, the team does make a great modernized take on the Mike Mignola look of the classic, like they did with the Kryptonian Age, while also not being a facsimile of his style. It looks great, and again, the character redesigns are great, but I admit I am a sucker for the weird fold-over breast look that I have no idea what it's called that Superman has in this, or like Winter Soldier used to have, or all of the Guardians did for a time. I just love that. I'm also really wondering about the Wonder Woman look in this, because it gives me a very Frank Millery vibe, but I think that might just be the heavy ink shadings and the face-framing tiara helm thing. Anyways, my verdict, regardless of all that, is pull it with an asterisk. Pull it means, well, it should be put on your pull list so you can follow it as it comes out every month. The asterisk here is that it's Gotham by Gaslight, so you should collect all the stuff from the past, from the original Elseworld through those sequels, and even the new Kryptonian Age stuff led by Andy Diggle. You will not be disappointed. I am so glad I get to talk about this series. I was worried that I would have to wait until I restarted binging on comics or reader's history to do so woohoo. As my kids would say, let's go! Yeah, I won't try and be young again, I promise. This is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, Rite of Spring, with Patrick Horvath as writer and artist, but Hassan Otsmane Elhau, sorry if I mispronounced her name, doing the letters. 8 years after the death of her brother Danny, Monica has been in the big city looking for any trace of him since his disappearance. She's reached a rut in her quest, every day looking through message boards and crime blotters, having a job solely to have a home base to search from, and just to eat to survive. It is a draining life, and it is a hard life, and one that doesn't give her any joy. But, one day after yet another post on a message board, she finally gets an answer. All it says is that if she's searching for her brother, then she should go to Woodbrook, Vermont. She takes her neighbor's car and goes there, and she finds a lead, albeit from an unhelpful police force, and then comes face to face with Samantha Strong, who knows exactly what happened to her brother. And boy howdy, if you've read the critical darling that is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, you know what that last sentence really means. And if you haven't, then what the actual hell is wrong with you? Yes, granted, it is described as Dexter meets Berenstain Bears, but that's just the charm of it. Or at least the charm of the first series. Now, I'm going to switch it up and talk about the art first because it is honestly the biggest, I'm not sure, that I do hear from people who haven't read it or don't want to read it, or just are unsure about reading it. The art is pretty, but not in a traditional sense. It's not crisp or glossy. Now, while the first book uses that to be very much reminiscent of a children's book gone wrong, with soft coloring, light line work, and very realistic animal heads on very realistic human bodies. No, I don't want to actually say it's the standard anthro style that those of us who are criminally online are used to. If you know, you know. But that art style paired shockingly well then with the darker tones of a psychological thriller, and it's honestly brilliant here because it doesn't change to be darker. It is just darker. The city is dark. Monica's daily life, even though she does become manager, looks so drab that it adds to the writing. And the writing is... Look, I've brought it up in other books this week and last week, but I am a sucker for a dark character-driven story. It's why I really enjoyed the original. But in this is the other shoe that I love seeing more. This isn't following the killer as she kills or the victim. And yes, I'm doing what I can to not spoil it, even though the solicits I've been reading really only focuses on Samantha Strong. The story focuses on, for lack of a better word, revenge. Maybe it's not revenge in a traditional sense. Monica is very open to wanting more closure than anything. But what honestly is going to happen when she can't get justice because of how laws are, and the killer is right there? Plus, again, the writing in the first 20 pages of this before the go to Woodbrook message is perfect to give us exactly who Monica is as a lead hen. She's a hen because she's a female duck. Did I forget to mention that she was a duck? Oh. So anyways, the solicits also focus on something that's subtle but there. This is set 8 years after the first, which was very much set in, for lack of better terminology, a picturesque 80s small town. Whereas this is definitely nearly a decade later, coming from the grime and banality of the city, with a focus on internet sleuthing. Again, I don't actually think I would have really focused heavily on that if it wasn't in the summary up on League of Comic Geeks. But yeah, that's actually an interesting look that I've even talked about on Killing 15 Minutes, my sister's true crimes podcast that I co-host, where we talk roughly 15 minutes about a serial killer or murder in general. But on there, and in this book, there's a subtext of how there's not a hard line about, and now we start catching people thanks to tech booms. But we start seeing a transition from, yeah, just bury him in the garden, you'll be fine, to Great, now we have to shove their bodies in 5 separate buckets of lye and dump them in 7 different counties just to not be a suspect in the first month. And honestly, I could go on about all this, but I'm definitely going to probably do a binging on comics or a reader's history or something on Beneath the Trees at some point. So, at least check out Killing 15 Minutes. I recommend the Unabomber 4-parter, where I call him an incel who would be a blue tick on Twitter today. But as for the book, long rants out of the way, let's get to the verdict of this book. If it's not obvious by now, my verdict is, collect it. Collect it means that it should be on your digital and physical pull list. You should have all the variant covers, especially that Scotty Young variant cover. And no, that's not just me loving Scotty Young covers. And I don't mean just The Rite of Spring either. If you don't have the original series, get it. If this is your bag, or even in the ballpark of stuff you are interested in, whether it be comics or not, you will love this. It's comic lit, not just comics being lit. Yes, I apologize for saying that. Jeff the Land Shark is the bane of my existence in Marvel Rivals. He is also the closest thing to the purest and goodest doggo in all of comic history. Kelly Thompson is a monster for unleashing this beast onto the world. So this should be fun. This is It's Jeff, Infinity Paws, number 1. Written by Jason Liu, art by Nao Fuji, with lettering by Annie Chang and Jasmine Alvarez. Before I even get into the comic itself, when the hell did everyone get so many damn cats? Is this the woke agenda I keep being accused of being a part of? Look, I hate cats. I just love my cat because he is a small dog whose head tilts when there's gonna be bad weather. But anyways, don't believe me about this cat propaganda? Okay, here's the cast of animals in this. You got Jeff the Land Shark, Lucky the Pizza Dog, that's Hawkeye's dog. Alligator Loki, Throng, that's the frog with Thor's power. Captain Marvel's cat Chewie, who's actually an alien flurkin with tentacles for a mouth. Liho, that's Black Widow's cat. Alpine, that's Winter Soldier's cat. Cole, that's Ghost Rider's cat. Dr. Shapiro, that's Iron Man's cat. Figaro, Oliver, and Lucifer are Gambit and Rogue's cats. Lupin, Raffles, Irene, and Simon are Black Cat's cats. By the way, I love the referencing names for hers. Cosmo the Space Dog. Tippy Toe, that's Squirrel Girl's squirrel, or at least one of them. Lockheed the Dragon, Lockjaw of the Inhumans. And Bats, Doctor Strange's ghost dog. Do you see how many cats are there? It is propaganda. Please note this is solely a joke and there is no cat agenda being perpetrated.
There, I said the thing, Thor. You can stop whining now.
I'm kidding, obviously. Anyways, this is a double-sized issue of nothing but fun as the big names in Marvel's pet demographic goes on a extraordinary journey through the Marvel Universe as it gets the Space Gem, collect the rest of them thanks to a weird tourney from the Collector, gets duped by Alligator Loki, and my favorite part, all without any real dialogue. Yes, there are talking animals like Cosmo or Dr. Shapiro or the Collector or Drax and Rocket Raccoon, but ultimately, it's an 80% wordless story. It's also why I think this is a great read, because this is a tour de force not in sparkling prose or stunningly breathtaking visuals. It is raw fun. It is a cartoon book. But in that fun cartoonishness, it tells a great story using only visuals. In the looks of the characters, in what is actually said. And yes, I may be overly praising it because I've had to read like 20 other comics this week, and I might just be getting burnt out. But this was comforting, warm, lovely, fun, great in all sorts of... It was a hot cup of cocoa in the middle of winter when you don't have to work the next day. I don't know. It may be a mixed metaphor. I need to just not write these hopped up at Monster on 3 a.m. So my verdict is, buy it. Buy it means it is not just worth having digitally, but most definitely should be gotten in a physical means as soon as possible. I'd also suggest checking out all the other Marvel Pets books lines on Marvel Unlimited. It's Jeff is an ongoing up there, and it's as adorably fun as this is. Is it cheating that there's a second printing of this book so I can count it as a new first issues? Maybe, but too bad. This is my show and I'm an ex-fanboy, so I will find any reasons to mark out. Maybe some shots will be taken here, but we won't find out until we get into Giant Size X-Men number 1. The first story is The Mutant That Walks Like a Man, written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. Art by Adam Kubert and colors by Laura Martin, with letters by VC's Clayton Cowles. The other is Revelation Superior, written by Al Ewing, art by Sarah Pichelli, colors by Federico Blee, and colors by VC's Clayton Cowles. We begin in the future, which I assume is the new Age of Revelations timeline, since it looks like it wants to be the Age of Apocalypse really, really bad. And Legion, the super evil son of Xavier, is breaking into a facility. But that is a tease. The real story is Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, talking about how she's a mutant and also an Inhuman, and essentially is getting readers up to date to where she is post-NYX. Before Bruno, her friend's time travel detector goes off, and bam, Kamala is sent back through time. And space technically, since she's now in Westchester many, many years ago. How long ago? Well, I don't want to talk about the timey-wimey stuff of X-Men, but like in the FCBD story, it's right after the OG X-Men were TPK'd by Krakoa. And Psyche is really glad to see Kamala, which I admit I absolutely totally forgot that Teen Cyclops from the 616 present era is the same as OG Psyche, so they've actually worked together before, so he's really happy to see her. Anywho, Psyche vouches for her, so Professor X allows her to join the team. And Psyche, Miss Marvel, and the other first wave of all-new, all-different X-Men, not to be confused with any of the other all-new, all-different teams, are all on their way to Krakoa. But suddenly, the jet explodes, and the timeline's very different, as Legion hovers there, menacingly. Now, this is the Legion from the far future with an X tattooed on his chest, who's actually a little confused about seeing Kamala there, too. However, it's no matter, because his target is not this team, but rather Krakoa. Hilariously, Ms. Marvel is able to talk to Krakoa, allowing it to shoot off into the sky. Legion can't follow it until he has something from a later part of the timeline, so he poofs him, and I think accidentally Miss Marvel, to the Dark Phoenix Saga, which is a number 1, so I'll have to cover that in a couple weeks. And the Revelation Superior story is about Xavier failing to recruit a mutant whose ability seems to be being better than the people around them, including mutants. So she's got shonen protagonist powers. Neat. Although at the end she gives a, "When the time is right, I shall change the world," menacingly. Anywho, I want to complain about how Marvel time travel doesn't work like that, or how it's never worked the way modern Marvel does, but that's been broken for years now, so I can't. I also want to complain that the Age of Revolution, in everything we've seen so far, looks like a pale imitation of the Age of Apocalypse. But I am hopeful that there's going to be something that makes it stand out amongst the sea of ages and houses and days of futures pastses. I'm going to try and focus on this book being its own thing. It's not bad, but this feels like it's just edging on every aspect that it wants to. You almost get a look at Miss Marvel post-NYX and interacting with the original all-new, all-different X-Men, but there's nothing there since they have to get to Legion's attack so quickly. You almost get a first-time adventure with the all-new, all-different team, but again, Legion needs to be pushed to the forefront since he's the crux of Age of Revelation. Now, assumably, you'd also be able to get a good look at the Age of Revelation story, but this is the first part of a series of one-shots, so guess what? It's just Legion talking out what we already know, except some vaguity about, "Wait until next time, folks," sort of feelings, and it all leads to a big case of narrative blue balls from every aspect. It does the cardinal sin of any comic book ever, or really any art or entertainment or consumable media ever. What was the point of engaging with this? Now, my verdict is going to be ignore it. However, it is hard to ignore, since it is a Miss Marvel story. It ties to the upcoming Age of Revelation event. It's the 50th anniversary of the first giant-size X-Men, which is all the reason why that this got a second printing, and it got me able to talk about it. But, geez, it'd have been less pointless if they kept the Cyclops kicking everyone's ass scene for Marvel Zero. I've read a lot of Archie comics, and I have read a lot of Kevin Smith written comics. And I have seen and read all of the Viewisk universe. So I have absolutely no idea what is about to happen here with Archie Meets Jay and Silent Bob, written by Kevin Smith, pencils by Fernando Ruiz, inks by Rich Kozlowski, colors by Matt Herms, and letters by Jack Morelli. Wait, Dante's dead? 0 out of 10, or spoilers. I'm not even sure anymore. Anyways, Archie is going to work at the Quick Stop, and hijinks ensues. Actually, I want to say this is a pretty solid Archie book. Basically, Archie becomes a clerk at Quick Stop. And some, oh man, Dante and Archie are kinda similar, what with their chasing Amy three-way throwdown about to happen. Although, things really ramp up when you get Jay and Silent Bob entering the picture. I have seen Archie take on werewolves, I've seen him take on the Predator, but there is something far more surreal about Jay saying snoogans to Archie Andrews. But even more surreal later, when Archie delivers food to the dispensary Jay and Silent Bob own, Jay's daughter is hyped to see Josie and the Pussycats. However, sadly tickets are way too much from scalpers, but hey, don't you know that Archie can get them into the show that's playing in Riverdale? Because don't you know that the Archies are going to be the ones opening for Josie when they do their Riverdale gig? But the day of the concert, Archie gets sick. So naturally, the incredibly stoned Jay is going to be the lead singer in his stead. It does way more insane things than you imagine here. Either way, the moral of the story is don't smoke dope if you don't want to be the Lizard King, I think. Okay, so I left out a lot of the gags from this, but come on. It's Archie meets Jay and Silent Bob. What is there really to say that isn't kind of plastered on the tin here? Do you like Clerks? Do you want to see Archie kneed in the balls for stringing along Betty and Veronica, not unlike a certain clerk who wasn't even supposed to be there today? Now, I will mark a point off because Silent Bob doesn't fuck Caitlin Ryan. Yeah, that's a weird cut to make people question whatever I mean, but oh well. Just to see what happened when they did Canada, eh? But anyways, yeah, this is an Archie comic through and through that just so happens to have hand stuff on the table and righteous bonging. And the art is, well, it's done by the current creatives for Archie Comics, so it is an Archie comic visually as well as even in writing, despite all the swearing. Maybe that's why my verdict for Archie meets Jay and Silent Bob is buy it. Buy it means that it absolutely isn't just a comic worth reading, but you should have the physical copy on your shelf too. I mean, come on, why wouldn't it be in between a copy of Clerks the Animated Series and Chasing Dogma? I am a blooded Yachtja warrior at this point. I've been since the Dark Horse days, and even if 2 out of every 5 installments in the IP has really been worth it. In fairness, you'd also have that bad of a batting average if there had been as much content made with this IP before Disney caught itself a fox. But hey, hope springs eternal, and there's 3 stories here, so let's rip the spine and skull out of the... Okay, I'm pretty sure I shouldn't say that. Let's just read Predator, Black, White, and Blood #1, with 3 stories, so I'll cover the creatives as we get to it. Although VC's Clayton Cowles is the letterer for everything, like a boss. So, first we have Bloodwood, Part 1, written by Joe Kelly, with art by Alvaro Lopez. Yee-haw, mates! We're in New South Wales, Australia. I'm never going to do that again. During their gold rush, so about 1850s. Millie has had a nice life. And then her father died, giving her a harsh life. And then her mother died. And now, in Australia, she feels as if she's in hell. A woman who has to show her assets as she works as a server at the Red House. A fighting pit, it seems. She knows the devils are around her, and she accepts a seat next to the managing partner of the Red House. Yet, even her words trying to find God in these moments has nothing as a cage is pushed into the fighting pit, and starved dogs are held at bay on leashes. And then the door opens, and a one-armed Yachtja steps from the cage. Okay, that's really damn cool setup, Joe. And that art style was not what I was expecting for a Predator book, but ooh, doggy. That minimalist color scheme is just chef's kiss. Next is Once and Future, written by Elliot Rahal, art by Brian Lovell, and colors by Lee Luffridge. Now we're in the Crusades, I think? As an aging man has a vision of doom, and tells the man with him that it is time to get the holy relic and leave. That guy pays some soldiers, especially Bron the soldier, and starts his trek before they're all ambushed by predators. However, as his team is killed off quickly, this is only like 6 or 7 pages after all, this man decided to get in touch with his ancestors, so he strips down, paints himself in woad, and poof, he's now invisible to the predator's thermal vision. And then he's able to kill the beast quickly. And so, while swearing an oath to be the great defender of the land, he uses a magic rail filled with the waters of life to heal Bran the soldier he hired, and melt down the Predator's armor to forge it into a sword. Hey, wait a minute, was this a play on Arthurian myth? Neat. Finally, there's A Place of No Honor, written by Sarah Gailey and art by Fran Galen. For expediency's sake, a predator goes to a gun show and finds none of the people there, trading in guns, buying guns, and all that, to be worthy warriors. But he does kill everybody there regardless. It's actually a really good indictment of the shallowness we as a society place on gun culture, complete with how the greatest weapon doesn't make the greatest warrior, since the guy selling people-tracking drones is also the squirmiest, doughiest worm around. Top marks. So, 3 stories. All set with different times, different styles of art, and honestly, I absolutely love this, because it shows aspects of the IP that isn't generic or trying to be the first movie but. Technically, the closest would be the middle one, which is still unique in that it takes that formula and puts it through an Arthurian sort of lens to make it feel more mythic and fresh. However, all 3 of these are fantastic, and although I think my favorite one is A Place of No Honor, because it is a fantastic commentary, while also being a tale that could really only be told from a Yotja, or maybe a Klingon, but they are also without honor if they aren't Worf, so take that as it is. So, anyways, my verdict is, pull it. Pull it means that it's not just worth having the issue hard copy, but it absolutely should be put on your pull list to check out the next issue. It'll continue the Joe Kelly story that was in this, and have 2 other brand new tales with it that I cannot wait to see. Oh, so instead of Toxie for president, apparently we're just going to get a reboot and a comic book, huh? At least call me back about the rebooting Toxic Crusader, Lloyd. I mean, let's check out the Toxic Avenger Comics #1, with 3 separate stories, so let's get in on that now. Although Age of Reason, written by Robert Jasonic and illustrated by Joe Orsak, and Bullets from the Copperhead Detective, written by Carl Caffarelli and illustrated by Ed Cato, are short stories at the end of the book. They're great, and I kind of wish they were done in a throwback comic style, especially Copperhead Detective. But let's talk about the main story. Something is Mutating the Children, written by Matt Bors, art by Fred Harper, color by Lee Luffridge, and letters by Rob Steen. So, Tromaville's been quarantined ever since the whole toxic spill that left people kind of mutiny. No, it's not an official quarantine, since even a senator can't get in thanks to the Gravy Seals patrolling the area. More importantly, though, in the town, beloved outcast Melvin, that's Toxie, is currently being hounded by the mom of the big problems from the first Toxic Avenger comic from last year, I believe. But even being ostracized, and with growing doubts about what sort of person he is, Toxie helps find some missing girls, in a kind of tragic way. Now, I am a Troma fan, from Tromeo and Juliet to the Toxic Avenger, and everywhere in between, so it's unique to see almost Swamp Thing levels of existentialism permeate this book. Now, the joy of Troma is the over-the-top nature, and it's righteously there in how insane the populace is, and even the big twist with the missing girls is very on point. But there's no fun to it. Over-the-top and outlandish and even mutated boobs swinging, sure, but it's all so somber and serious. Toxie is all about pontificating about if he's a good person, what does the mutation mean about him, and I honestly can't tell if I like it. I mean, I actually really like the writing here. Matt Bors, in this and the one from last year's, really nails a very solid take with Tromaville, and Fred Harper has a distinctive indie comics vibe that keeps up a B-movie feel that I love about Troma films in general. However, that's where a strange meta-discussion opens itself. Like I said, I think this is fantastically Swamp Thing in its existentialism, and even in its visuals to an extent. I could absolutely see this killing under the Vertigo comic line. And it's honestly not actually outside the realm of Toxic Avengers. It's just, for a different example, it's almost like the MASH joke from Futurama. You know, where they have the Alan Alda bot? The entire Troma feel is, this ain't a war, it's a moida. But this flips the Alan Alda bot to maudlin, and then we get, this isn't a war, it's a murder. Again, none of that's bad, it's just different. It's like a new pair of underpants, kind of hugging in the right spots, other times bunching in the wrong spots. After saying all that, I think my verdict has to be, read it. While I do think that it's worthy of a pull it, and even checking out the last issue, so technically it might be a collect it, I'm more inclined to say that at the very least, to general audiences, it is worth at least checking out this issue for yourself to see if it clicks with you or not. I know, sometimes art needs to be experienced to be able to actually be experienced. I know nothing about this other than everyone looks really cool on the cover. But it is David Marquez, so it's going to look great regardless. So, with that said, let's check out The Unchosen #1. Written and arted by David Marquez, colors by Marissa Luis, with letters and design by DC Hopkins. 13-year-old Ada wakes up in the crater of a devastated city, a crater that she caused. Pursued by rival forces clad all in black and also looking pretty cool, she's brought to the mysterious school for gifted youngsters as she discovers her true power, also known as the Word, alongside other kids. Okay, I admit that I used the bastardized version of the solicit summary off of League of Comic Geeks, because I know this is going to sound bad, but it's not, I swear. This is a first issue that gives the generic bullet points and loses a lot in summary. What I mean by that is, for instance, the first major scene is Ada comes across Daniel, another boy her age and in her class or what have you, cradling a dead bird. He's saying that he couldn't help it, so Ada comforts him and even tries to use her word to bring it back. And then a douchebag of a child comes and kinda undeads the bird to attack Ada. It is a great read, but in explaining it, you lose a lot of what makes it more unique to the comic itself, since the "it'll be okay, oh hey douchebag, what are you doing?" is almost a trope at this point. There's not a lot new in this book, in generalization, but I actually really like it because Marquez makes Ada and the world rich and worth checking out. I think this book has actually done a disservice by not being a graphic novel, because I absolutely want more, and it almost feels like this is part 1, without giving you the hook to be part 1. As for the art, like I said, it rules. Now, I hate that First Issues Now is now in its podcast era, because I think just showing off the art would be why this is at the very least worth having. For the debut issue of his first creator-owned comic, I absolutely think that this is the smell of garlic bread. It's inviting, it gets your stomach grumbling, and you know there's a fantastic meal right around the corner. Why yes, I'm waiting for dinner, why do you ask? So my verdict is, pull it. Pull it means that this issue is worth reading, and it should be put on your pull list for the future issues. And once you read this, I think you'll understand what I mean, that the future is bright on this. With all of that said though, maybe I'm wrong, or I missed a comic worth talking about. If you're listening to this on insert podcast platform here, comment if you can, or you can do it over on YouTube, or you can let me know directly on social media at The Comic Archivist on Facebook, on Twitter at AJC_doesitall, and even on Blue Sky at AJCdoesitall, without any underscore. I'm always open to being told how wrong I am about current mainstream or indie books. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, and all the other stuff that I'm being told that I need to say to keep this show going. More than anything, though, remember to stay golden, Inklings.